What's up, everybody? Jeff C. back with another book review. I have been pretty busy this spooky season. There's definitely a good reason why it's taken me a little bit of time to upload another video, considering that I've been reading this chonker. If you didn't notice in the thumbnail, I've finished my first read through of Stephen King's The Stand. So pretty exciting. And I really, first, before I even talk about the book, I want to go over why do I have so many versions of this book. So as one does, I go to Half Price Books a lot. I'm here in Houston, Texas, so there's plenty to choose from. And one of the first things I almost always do is go look at the Stephen King hardback, editions and see what's there. And if there's something I don't own yet and it's a good version, especially if it's a first edition, then I get it. So I had gone in and there was this version of The Stand, and it's nice shape, and I think it was like $15 something. So I was like, okay, cool, I'll take it. And I got a couple other books while I was there. And one of the things I always do when I'm leaving, when I'm kind of on my way to the front at my local Half Price Books, is I kind of go into the purchasing area where people bring in their books and they buy them from them. And so they always have, they have this wall of shelves behind them with books that they've purchased. So I kind of just look and see what's up there, because you can buy those books already. They almost always they have stickers on them, and you can just buy them. And so I was there, and I'm looking, and I thought I noticed something kind of odd. And so I asked the guy that was standing there, I was like, hey man, can I see that version of The Stand that's on the shelf back there? Even though I had this version of The Stand on me. So he hands it to me, and I look, and it is, yes indeed, a first edition of The Stand. And this is verified first edition in the front, and it has the T whatever letter on page 823, I think. Where is that? 823. I should have already had this highlighted. That wasn't. Yeah, so on the inside it has the T39 right there on the inside of it, page 823. So it's, and there's a little tear here or whatever, but for $29.99, I was like, yes, I'm gonna take this. And what's so funny is it's just really cool, because I remember my father having a copy of this, and he was a huge Stephen King fan, so it was really nice to have both these versions, to kind of have that connection with him. And so literally bought 2 copies of The Stand at the same time from Half Price Books. And I don't care about like how you can get X amount of dollars for this online. I don't buy almost anything for that. I'd buy it because I want to have it. And so it's there. My first read through though was the uncut edition. So this next edition, I've seen online, some of the YouTubers that my wife and I watch. I've seen this version, and I'm just such a fan of the cover. And it's not available anymore from what I've seen, but it's the Barnes & Noble leather-bound edition. I just love it. So my beautiful bride got it for me for Christmas 2024. So awesome. Thanks, babe. And speaking of my beautiful bride, we are both actually buddy reading The Stand. I just finished. She is very close to being finished. But she had expressed that she didn't want to read a hardcover. I initially was going to read the black version here, and actually I read a lot of that. And so I went to Barnes & Noble, and this is the version that's currently out in pretty much summer 2025. You know, and it's, you know, whatever, it's the story, but boy, look at that. Here's her little, she's taking some notes. That's some flop factor right there. That's really cool. So, yeah, she's getting through that. What up, bird? It's funny that there's a black crow right here behind me. So, yeah, so I got that, and then I also have it on Kindle, and actually I also have it on Audible. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 versions of this book. Only read it once though. The reason I have it on Audible is because I have found that if something's this big, you know, I get through a certain point, even if I'm really enjoying it, I just, you know, you kind of get to where like, boy, let's go. And so what I have successfully incorporated into my kind of big, you know, if a book's only like 300 pages, I don't care. But if it's, you know, like when I did this for the Live Strip Traders trilogy, which is total of, you know, that's 2,800 pages. So I listen on Audible and just read. You know, it's kind of immersive reading, and, you know, I put it up, I speed it up quite significantly, about 2.5 times, and it just makes it to where you can just boom, 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 just go. And so I utilized that probably for about the last 600 pages of The Stand. So it was nice. It took me 22 days. I'll post a picture here of, I had a note that where I had broken down how much I needed to read per day to actually have it done by the end of October, with about, I think, 2 or 3 kind of break days in there. And so I was able to get through it a little faster. So yeah. So now let's talk about what I thought about The Stand by Stephen King. I don't know if I can get a video of this dude. Hold on. Look at this guy. He's just over here yelling at me. Why is this? Hold on, let me fix this. Yeah. He's like, hey man, you got a book with me on the back. I don't know. What do you do? All right, so The Stand, it seems like I have been hearing about this book as long as I can remember. I know I was in my single digits when I was hearing about it. Of course, for my father, he loved the book. And, you know, a lot of people talk about this. They say that The Stand is, you know, it's post-apocalyptic, it's as epic. And yes, it is both of those things for sure. A lot of people label this as Stephen King's magnum opus. I can see that for sure, especially at the time it was written. And so yeah, you know, it's reputed, it's a post-apocalyptic, there's a sprawling cast. You know, there's a good versus evil aspect to this story, pretty much given on a grand scale. Now, there were 2 big things that surprised me going through this novel, and they're really just because, you know, we're talking like decades of me hearing about this book and people talk about it, and so I kind of formed conclusions in my mind just based off what I had heard or what I remembered hearing, really, because it's not like I was taking notes as people were writing this stuff down. And so let me tell you about those 2 things that I was really thinking about going in. One, again, going back to that post-apocalyptic description. So in my head, I kind of thought it was going to be sort of, you know, the thing has already happened. Millions and, you know, 90+% of the population is gone. And that's where you find our hero in the story, you know, whatever you want to say. And actually, no, you actually get to go through the apocalypse here. So it actually starts with a fully populous planet. And so I was like, especially being in the medical field and having us just go through a pandemic, you know, 5 years ago, it was really cool to read that part of this story. It was one of my most enjoyable aspects of The Stand. The other part is you always hear about the good versus evil, and it's no secret that, the main antagonist name is Randall Flagg. And you'd always just hear about this battle, or I've heard people say there's like a battle. And so I just always assumed it's like, okay, it's a group of good guys physically fighting with a group of bad guys, or Randall Flagg and his henchmen. And it's not quite that. I don't want to go too deep into how it works, but I'll just say that it really seems more like you kind of see Flagg get pieced apart, and I think that's a good allegory for how we as humans get through real problems in our lives, in real time. Is you don't always just get one big grand solution. You have to figure it out, and it kind of works itself out or not. So that with the plot, I like this plot. It builds, it goes continually, even though for as big as this book is, there's always, something different coming up, but it's different parts of the same path that are all coalescing towards a common end. But this is a character driven story. You meet people who go through some of the worst stuff you could possibly imagine having to go through, especially in terms of loss, and not only like losing an individual in your life, but just seeing the entire world collapse around you and everything you ever knew, and then having to try to figure out, what are you gonna do? What's supposed to happen here? And you couple that with a supernatural aspect that is uniting all of these individuals who are running across each other out in the world, as you're going along and you decide to just move. Maybe you're looking for resources, you're just trying to find other people, and you meet somebody and you're having, an acceptable time with them, and you're talking to them, and then all of a sudden you realize you and that person are like having the same dreams about the same person, and that person's telling you to do the same thing. And so that kind of aspect is it's really cool. And so yeah. And then also, as these individuals start to coagulate into groups, and it gets bigger, and they settle, and they have a good figure, and there's an evil figure, and as those groups start to grow around those figures, it's really cool to see the dynamic that evolves amongst those people. And you still have a core group of people who you're kind of dealing with, but there are some sub characters that come in and they make an impact, and you can remember them. And some characters that are really cool, and they go through some trials, and you feel for them during those trials, and you're like, man, I don't really know this guy, but yeah, I feel kind of bad for him for some of the stuff he's having to deal with. Oh, there's one character, I won't say who it is, but he might be my most hated character in a book so far. Not because I don't like how he's written, it's just because he sucks. Yeah, anyway, I'll just leave it at that. And it's not who you're probably thinking of. I'll just say it's not Randall Flagg. There's another person. If you know, you know. And he, yeah, let me stop. But if you want to know, you can message me and ask who it was I was thinking of, and I'll let you know. But anyway, yeah, it's kind of, one thing that's kind of funny is these guys obviously just existing in this time is its own kind of epic tale, and there's an aspect of going off on a grand adventure, because it's literally the fact that you can wake up still and there's nothing now. Every day is a new adventure, because you don't know what's going to happen. And so you have that part of it, but then once you're in the group and there's thousands of people together, some from that group get to go off on a tale or an adventure to try to deal with this other problem that people are, that's arising in the West, we'll just say. And so, it's kind of there's a cool story within the story. None of it seems rushed, obviously, with almost 1,200 pages of novel. But I like the conclusion. I think one of the last things that happened, I'll just say that maybe you'll be able to, some of you will know what, there's the ending of this book in the way that the very last scene of The Silence of the Lambs is, the movie. There's a funny little correlation, kind of, not super, not exactly the same, but there's a kind of a cool little thing going on there. So I wonder if any of y'all caught that. I guess both of these have been around long enough to maybe if you might have made that connection. So if you have, leave it in the comments, maybe put spoiler, something like that. I'd love to see if anybody else kind of thought about that. Maybe it's just because I have such a big history with watching the movie Silence of the Lambs. So I don't know. Of course, this has Stephen King's signature prose. He is so good at just writing just the human experience. Again, I keep thinking of, like, if you ever had like an old man in your life that was like, no matter what situation you were describing, he could sum it all up in a sentence or a couple of words. He is the king of that, Stephen the Kang. And this book is just littered with those lines, as per usual. I mean, he's a never-ending fountain of that type of stuff, and I love it. The world building, it just feels lived in. It's highly detailed, very believable, almost factual sometimes, because he does talk about places on the map and it's just northwest of this city, that type of stuff. And so A1 on that. And kind of like what I alluded to earlier with the dream aspects and some other stuff, there's a really good mix of like realism and almost as realistic on the grandest scale that we've probably ever experienced on Earth, and then a good mix of that and like mythical content, as well as from like dealing with pure evil and pure love. So it's he brings all of that in one story. So who is Stephen King's The Stand for? If you have never read Stephen King and you're not afraid of big books, maybe this might be an okay place to start. I don't know. I still say that if you've never read Stephen King, I'm gonna put it right here. Different Seasons by far is my number one book that I think you should read. There's 4 good stories in there that really really display his style. There's horror, there's realism, there's coming of age. It's all in there. And I really recommend Different Seasons if you've never read Stephen King. If you have read Stephen King and you have not read The Stand, get on it. Don't be afraid of the size. I have my own kind of philosophy about reading big books, and it took me a while to get there. I think, just simply, and I might make a video about this a little later, but in order to really, you have to fall out of love with ending books. And what I mean by that just quickly is, like, if you love the act of reading, then every day you're reading for X amount of time. So you're not concerned about like, oh, I want to see how this ends. You're just along for the journey. I'm a big fan of the journey. So much though that if the journey's good and the ending's kind of whatever, I I'm okay with it, you know. But I think that's something that personally I had to kind of work through. And you know, and it's kind of a form of an endurance, right? I mean, I when I really started getting into reading consistently, I had to start with small books, and I just built myself up into where now it's like I don't care if I'm reading almost 1,200 pages. It's the end of the evening, and I just read for an hour or two sometimes, you know, and that's just what happens. And so, yeah, I don't know, it's worth it. The size of this book, I truly feel. This is certainly a book for fans of like character-driven epics. Maybe you liked Lonesome Dove, you know, let's say, or if you're a fan of like moral allegories, maybe like the Pilgrim's Progress or Animal Farm, The Stand will be for you. Are you a fan of stories that make you think of human nature? This is also going to be right up your alley. I'm talking about books like The Lord of the Flies, or maybe there's another famous post-apocalyptic story, The Road by Cormac McCarthy. If you're a fan of those, read The Stand. I'd probably assume that if you've read The Road by Cormac McCarthy, you've probably already read The Stand, but you know, hey, it takes all types. And so in conclusion, I gave The Stand 4.25 stars on Fable, 4 stars on Goodreads. You can follow me there. I would love to interact with you there. And I would just say that, yeah, The Stand is not about the end of the world. It's about what's left of us afterwards. And so, yeah, please, if you've read The Stand, let me know what you thought about it in the comments. I would love to talk to you about it there. And I appreciate you guys who watch these videos, and I'll keep making them. And I'm on to the next book. We still have, where are we at? This is the 24th, so we got 7 days left, including today in spooky season. And so I'm reading another book, and so hopefully this one's only about 350-ish pages, so I'll be back soon to tell you about that. So thank you guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.